Welcome to the Gifts from the Edge podcast, where you are about to meet parents and professionals, educators and entrepreneurs who have taken the path less traveled, and by doing that, have made all the difference. Now it's time to step out of the ordinary. Here's your host, Andrew Lord.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Gifts from the Edge podcast. Today, we are talking with Kevin Young, who's the founder and the director of the Love and Life Media Group. He's also the father of Zac Young, who is the subject of an up-and-coming documentary, Zac Forever Young, which celebrates the life and courage of a young man who was captivated by a faith in Jesus. And we're going to hear more about that on the interview. But Kevin's a musician, he's a prayer warrior, he's now a movie producer as well. He's got a heart of gold and he just loves people, which is why I'm really proud to call him my friend. Kevin, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, hi Andrew. Great to be here. Looking forward to this morning.
All right, so why don't you just tell everyone a little bit about what's been going on? I know you've been flat out and we really do appreciate you making some time to be here this morning, but just give us a bit of a rundown on what the last couple of weeks or months has been like.
Yeah, well, it's really been the last 4 or 5 months. It's been a full-time project, and it's been 10 years now since Zac passed in that shark attack, and I've always thought we'd one day do a movie. I didn't know if it'd be a theatrical movie or a documentary or what type, but I knew one day that would happen. So when actually the producer of this is not really myself, I'm obviously a large part of it, but Zac Young, who used to be the executive producer for Hillsong Television for a number of years, is actually the producer of the film. So we met together some months ago at Easter, where I went with him to Alice Springs to meet Ken Duncan to do a short film with him. And I was just supporting that process. And I asked him at the time whether he'd consider it. And he jumped in pretty well within a few days. And even though he was very busy, he sounded like he wanted to say no, because like a lot of us, when you take on a big project, you know what the work is. And but to his surprise as well as mine, he said yes. And so we started about 6 months ago. So it's been on the hop since then. And it's grown bigger than Ben-Hur, and here we are today.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, it's very exciting. You mentioned there that it's the 10-year anniversary since Zac passed away. This podcast is about people who have been to the edge, people who have walked through a wilderness time or a difficult time and now have gifts to share with other people. I think that, the fear of death, the fear of losing a loved one, would be very high on most people's radar. Can you tell us, or can you walk us through some of those raw moments that were, that happened 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think it's best to start right at the very beginning, and I call it that day. Amplified that day. I was down at Nelson's Bay helping a couple of friends of mine and their family renovate a restaurant as they were running overtime and they couldn't open in time. So I was down there with Michael Chikos and Deb and all these friends of mine, and we were managing just renovating it when I got this call. And the call just said this: it's the strangest call I've ever had in my life. And it just said, "Are you Mr. Young?" I said, "Yeah, I'm Mr. Young." He said, "Are you at home?" I said, "No, I'm not home. I'm at Little Beach Restaurant, Nelson's Bay." He said, "Can you come home?" I said, "Who are you?" And he said, "Oh, that's all right. I'll send the police round. They'll be round in a minute." It was the strangest call. I've never heard that guy's name. He didn't tell me his name. He didn't tell me what it was about. And all of a sudden, that was the end of the phone call. So I was out in the car park. It's a very large car park right next to the water. And my friends were inside this restaurant. They had a double set of doors open. I could see them all about 50 feet away. And I thought, wow, what was this? And I've got 9 children. And one of my boys had been in a little bit of light trouble. And I thought, if anyone's in trouble, it's probably him. And so I rang up one of my older sons, Sam, and I said, Sam, are you at home? He said, no, Dad, I'm out to sea. He was blue water diving about 7 k's out to sea. And I told him what had happened. He said, that's really strange. Would you ring me up when you find out what's going on? Because it sounded semi-serious. I didn't think it was real big serious. I just thought it sounded like something. And within 3, 4, 5 minutes, the police car pulled up in the car park, and the head of the police department in Nelson's Bay, Dave, who's a very large guy, probably 6'3", 4 or something, got out with another lady who was a police officer, walked over to me, looked at me and just said, are you Mr. Young? And I said, yeah, I'm Kevin Young. And he said, my name's Dave, Kev. Then he looked to the left and said, oh, are they your friends in the restaurant there? And I said, yeah. And then he said this statement, which has escalated it again. And he said, would you mind, could we go in there with your friends? And you think about that for a second. You had gone from this is probably something serious with one of my boys in trouble, possibly with the police, to this is really now a big deal. And I looked at him, and I was like I am now. I just felt emotion growing in me. And I was fine, but I just felt that sense of something's coming my way in a few seconds. And I just turned to him and I said, listen, Dave, I'm not going in with my friends. Everything is okay, no matter what it is. Please just tell me here. And he just said it very straightforward. And he just said, Kev, your son, Zac, has just been killed in a shark attack. And at that moment, everything went still. And even though, like now, I was choking a little bit then, emotions in me, which I'm very well aware of, I class it as a different type of emotion. I'm not sure if I'm objective in my self-awareness here, but I felt a stillness, and I felt I was in the middle of a hurricane or a tornado where they say it's really, really quiet. Even in a way they say sometimes it's deathly quiet. I probably don't use that word. And when you're in there, you're actually safe, but you're aware of the damage that's circulating around you. And so I immediately felt peace. It's been like that for me all through my life around this with Zac. I've never left that place. So from my point of view, I've never had PTSD or trauma. I've had grief and I've got emotion. And some of that emotion is emotion which is grief, and some of it is a deep sense of love and peace mixed with tears. So for me, immediately I went quiet and I thought to myself, wow, I didn't see that coming. And then I just slowly walked over across the car park to a set of wooden steps that goes about 20 feet down to the sand on the beach there. And I just sat on the step, lowered my head, just bowed my head between my arms, and I quietly just wept. And a few minutes later, not really sure how long, probably 2-3 minutes, Michael Chikos came over, who was, and is, one of my best friends. And he just sat next to me on my left-hand side, slipped his arm around my shoulder and bowed his head. And he gave me what I felt was probably the greatest gift I've ever received in my life. And that was just a gift of silence. And a whole volume went through me of just feeling loved and safe, secure. All those feelings were there. And Mike said nothing, which is important to highlight, because I think sometimes in any traumatic event like these sort of things, just to be with someone, to listen, and to say nothing, I would say is probably the greatest gift you can give anyone. People don't need to hear too much. They just need to process and let them go through what they're going through, at least from my point of view. So that's how things started back then. And in all honesty, even though like now I've choked a couple of times, emotion comes and I have to allow that. I don't suppress it. I just think, okay, it's there. I can't speak for a moment. Let it pass, and then I'm back to normal again. And I don't really know what goes on in that few moments. It's probably still healing going on in my life. I'm not really sure, but I'm okay with it. It's not traumatic. I'm not wrestling with my son dying. As a matter of fact, I even correct people in most of my interviews. They use words like this as Kev, whose son died and passed away. And I say to them, well, actually, he's passed over is better English because, as we all know, Zac was a on-fire Christian. He wasn't just a religious person. He was someone who had a living relationship with God, who walked and talked with him. And so for me, it says when you become a Christian, you get eternal life. So eternal life doesn't mean death, it means eternal life. So when we leave this body, which we call death, we don't just go off into never, never land. The Bible says we have eternal life, and a lot of us don't know what that fully looks like, and I'm not sure that I do either, except I have had experiences the 2 weeks before Zac was, the service we had for Zac, I had 3 times when Zac actually came back and talked with me, and that weirds people out because automatically they think of, maybe something like seances or talking to the dead, which is not really a thing we're supposed to do. But if you look at the Bible, clearly Jesus, when he rose from the dead, he appeared to 500 people, Elijah, different characters, and it talks about it. It's not a major topic, and it doesn't instruct us necessarily to seek it, but it does say it happened. And that's what happened to me. So it was part of my experience that I had to deal with and process. So that's been part of my experience. So that's where I'm at right now.
Wow. Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. After, months, years after, were there moments where it became more difficult, or did you just have that peace, and that peace has stayed strong through the years?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I've never left that place of peace. And because I think one thing that's unique in this, well, the first thing is Zac knew that he was going home soon. What I mean, that he was going to pass soon. We'd talked about it, and it'll come out in the documentary. It wasn't only me that talked to him and him brought up that subject, but Jakayla Glover and all of the friends that he was part of in a group. There was about 20 of them. And it used to annoy them in the documentary where we interview her and other people. They all talk about how Zac used to say, I'm not going to be around much longer. And they would then correct him and say, can you stop saying that? Like, that's annoying. It was annoying for them. But Zac kept on saying it. And we talked about it, I think, in a little bit more detail. And when we did, it was a strange topic. You can imagine. Zac believed he wasn't going to be around much longer. It was clear. What that meant and what was going on in Zac's mind is quite a big deal. So when we talked about those things, it wasn't so much I hid that topic in my heart. It just troubled me a little bit, and I couldn't get rid of it. And I thought, well, Zac, what are you talking about? Was he said to me one day, Dad, I'm not planning on getting married anymore. And I corrected him and I said, why'd you say such a stupid thing? And then in a different tone of voice, he just said, Dad, I don't believe I'm going to be around much longer. And if I was married and had to leave my wife alone, I think that wouldn't be good for her. So I decided not to get married now.
Wow.
Yeah, so statements like that, I don't know if he said that to other people. Not exactly that way, but he certainly did to me specifically. And I couldn't reply to that. I just hid that statement in my heart, and it troubled me. I didn't know what to do with it. But I think that's what prepared me when he did pass. That was one of 2 things that happened that made me, in a way, I think, be ready for what eventually happened. It wasn't a surprise in one way because of that.
And so, I mean, that shows Zac's character as well. Like, it's one thing to have a premonition or an inkling about you not being around much longer, but then to make a a conscious decision of this is what it's going to mean for the people, you know, who I might be in love with, or, you know, might be connected with, you know, in a very selfless kind of way. It shows a lot about who Zac was, doesn't it?
Oh, enormous, because, you know, when we talk about Zac, excuse me for the coughing, but when we talk about Zac, and I think what would be the one word that I would just float to the top, that would be the most paramount word, and certainly love. But when we say love, we have to define what we're even saying, unfortunately, because, you know, love is such a tossed around word. All we need is love, and, you know, the Beatles and
Yeah.
free love in the 60s, 70s, and we go, it wasn't free love, it was just immoral sex. That's what it was. You know, a lot of people didn't really, you know, so with me, love would be the key word. But what I mean by the word love is, I did a bit of I've done about 1,200 interviews after Zac passed, because I had to speak on Zac at a community event. And I thought I need to speak about what love is and how we saw that. Let me go back to the second experience, which would help clarify what Zac understood and what I understood of my son. And that was, we had this unusual relationship. We made an agreement after he became a Christian. He'd been a Christian 18 months before he passed. We travelled the world together. We went over to Vanuatu on a big missions trip, and we did Bible college, the School of the Supernatural together, exploring what it is to know God in a supernatural, deep way. And when we were on that journey, excuse me, when we were on that journey, we made this agreement. We wouldn't hold back, and we'd share everything together, intimate things. And you might have to edit this later, I'm not sure. So I'll keep it as good as well I can, about an M15 level. At least I think you might get it over the line. But we had this agreement, we'd share everything. And one day, our pattern of life was, here we go in his room, and whether people understand what I'm going to say right now or not, I'll just say it. You can deal with it later. Here we go in his room, leave, go to heaven, and he could choose to do that at any time. He didn't need to fast for 40 days or any of this sort of stuff, which was more part of my world. And God would show him things in heaven, and then you come back and tell him what he'd seen. And so that was a common part of his life. And he'd always go in his room, come out and share with me those personal things, because we had this agreement that we wouldn't hold back and we'd share everything. And really early in the piece, he did plan to get married by the time he was 21, even though I don't think he had anyone serious. And about 12 weeks before he passed, he went into his room, came out, and he was shut down. Now, that was 100% opposite of his character and the way that he would do things. And because we had this agreement, I said, what's going on, Zac, you know? And, well, actually, there's one thing just before this happened. He'd been in his room, and he came out, and he said, Dad, I don't masturbate anymore. I think at that point I crossed my legs, and I'm getting a bit embarrassed. I'm thinking, you're more sharing than I'm sharing. I don't know if I'm willing to go there. So I found it very challenging. And I'm just saying that because it shows you, again, what you said a minute ago, where Zac was at. He was incredibly transparent. I don't know how many people he would have shared that with. Maybe it was only me. But he did share that, and you can see the depth in which he was going. And so when it came to this time, when 12 weeks before he went in his room and came out, he didn't come out excited and sharing like normal. And he had never done this before. He was shut down completely. And I said, what's going on, Zac? And he tried to palm me off. And then because I said, listen, you agreed to share everything. I'm holding you to your word, you know. And he took that seriously. He said, well, I'm not planning, Dad, to get married anymore. And I said, why would you say such a stupid thing? And so when he replied to me that day and said, Dad, I don't believe I'm going to be around much longer, and if I was left my wife alone, like I've said, he brought that up again. And I thought, something's going on in him that I don't really fully understand, but it's deep. And then about 3 weeks, maybe 4 went by, and we're about 8 weeks before he was killed in the shark attack. And he came out of his room again, shut down. And again, I went through the process and said, you've agreed you wouldn't hold back. And I forced him. I really had to bend his arm. There was something going on between him and God that probably would have been right for him to keep between him and God. But we had this agreement. So I, if you like, I forced him. I didn't mean to do it in a way that was wrong for him, but I just wondered what was happening. And he said to me, I've recommitted my life to God. And if you know a bit of Zac's story, when he came to Christ, he gave his life to him 5 times, and he talks about how each time it seemed to be that he gave more of him. Excuse me. And so when he came to this place, he was in his room and he recommitted his life. I said, what do you mean you recommitted your life? You're the most committed guy I've ever met, you know? And then he said this statement. He said, I just prayed a prayer. And I said, well, come on, what prayer? What are you talking about? And this is a bit troubling, but this is what he said. Said, this is his prayer to God in his private space. Father, I give you my life and I give you my death. Whichever one would honour you greater, I put that choice in your hands. And that was a very fat thing in the room. It sort of sat on me and I didn't know what to do with that thing. And I didn't reply. It troubled me. And 8 weeks later, he's passed. So these things which were already, if you like, programmed in me that Zac and somehow God had let me to be part of, processed a million miles an hour in my head. And I thought, somehow it seems to make sense now. And then what happened as a result of that, when he passed, which was a Saturday, all my family came back into my house. We all slept around the place, you know, processing what was going to happen the next few days. And I went into Zac's room and found his diary, where the last words that he wrote in his diary, I thought I wanted to see what was going on in his heart and mind. And in his diary, the last entry in his diary, I can quote you off by heart of these words. And this is part of the reason why I'm doing this interview with you this morning, because there's a really big opportunity, a really big job, not only for me, not only for you, Andrew, but anyone who sees this podcast. Think about what I'm going to say right now. And this is Zac's last words of a guy who's sold out for God. And I quote, I, Zachariah Micah Young, am a passionate follower of the Lord Jesus. My mission in life is to reach every major city of the world with the message of his love. End quote. Now, when you look at that, you know, pretty ambitious statement. A lot of people would say that's the dreams of someone that's a bit unrealistic. And generally speaking, you would think that would be absolutely true. It's a big statement. We can all make them. But Zac and myself had read a book on prayer by Andrew Murray where it just says these words. It says, God's really, really, really big. He's really, really, really powerful. And he's a loving father. He loves everybody on the whole planet. He can do all things. We know those statements. But Zac was knocking on the door of God's heart going, I believe you can do this, God. I'm believing that you will do this, God. And I'll give my life for that, God. I see that as more important than getting married, see it more important than a career, or whatever. When he made that statement, I didn't know where that would lead, which is really where we are today with this documentary and also the event in Port Macquarie, because about 9-10 months after Zac had passed, my family paid for me to go to Bali to have a bit of a break. It had been a pretty intense time for actually months. And when I came back at the airport at Sydney, I was in a transfer bus with two probably 88-year-old elderly people from Canada. And I had a surfboard. It was Zac's birthday on this particular day. And I'm not an overly reminiscing type of person, but I was just thinking about Zac, thinking, wow, you know, he passed away 8-9 months ago and it's his birthday today. And it was normal. I was fine, not emotional. And then this lady in the bus turned to me and she said, and this is really weird. What I'm going to say now is exactly what she did. She said, we come from Canada. We love your country, but we don't have spiders or snakes. or sharks. And he puts her hands up in the air and basically yells out sharks. And like she's really afraid of sharks, you know. Anyway, it triggered me and I got messed up. I started bawling my eyes out and snotting everywhere. I was really messed up. And I'm pretty well on the floor nearly, you know. And she's looking at me like, what the heck did I do, you know? We got out of the bus and she walked over, apologised. And I said, it's nothing to do with you. You wouldn't know, but my son was killed a year ago in a shark attack. She paused, and it was this sovereign God moment. She paused and looked at me and in a solemn, beautiful way just said, Kev, you know, that's your mandate now. Your mandate is to tell his story. Zach's life was to live his life, and some might say, and I don't know if it's too far off the mark, and even giving his life, you know, for what he believed. And he finished there. But now God's not only raised me up to be part of this, but you on your program, the people are watching this. And at that time, there was 3,158 major cities in the world, population base of 100,000 up. Today, I think it's 4,037, and which I didn't realise it's changed. My job's got bigger.
Better get it done quick. Keep going
so
up.
The only way we can get the message of God's love out to all those places is, yes, I am hitting the road. And believe it or not, the very first city that I'll be rolling this out is the city of Port Macquarie, which I never even realised till after we created this event, that this event is centred around Zac. And if we're going to talk about Zac, whether we're Calathumpian, Muslim, Buddhist, whatever you might be in your belief system, the story of my son's life is really universal, everybody, because we speak about love. But I don't want to hide the fact that it's not just universal love and we're all kind to each other. Zac, when he talked about love, he talked about God's love. And when we talk about God's love is a love that is different than what we experience and know. We know the different types of love and how we can be love in different levels and all that sort of stuff. People rarely talk about this quality of love, which is sees, and when I talk about it, I'd rather say it in this way. You're either in temporal love or you got eternal love. What I mean by that is 100 years that you live, if you think about eternity, which is forever and ever and ever, it would be true to say that if I picked up one grain of sand on the beach and then threw it back at Lighthouse Beach, you know that I couldn't find it. It'd be nearly impossible to find that grain. Now, that's conservative to say that this life of 100 years or 70 years, whatever it might be, is like a grain. It's nowhere near like a grain in the light of eternity. It's an exaggeration, really. You would never find your life in eternity, because eternity is forever and ever, trillions and trillions and trillions upon billions and trillions of years. So this 100 years, as precious as what it is and as important as what it is really a blink and it's gone. And it's not even a blink. So when we talk about things that have value, we can put them in two categories. Temporal value, all the material things, every single material thing we see, even when we look at our own body's only going to last us whatever amount of time, less than 100 years. What's eternal? And see, God sent his son to die for you and me. And you think about that, you pause there and go, a father deliberately, not by accident, with a plan, sent his son Jesus not only to die, but to be crucified and slaughtered for you and me so that we can have a relationship back with him. He was willing to pay a price on such a level that we sit here, it is mind-boggling. Even on a shallow level, it's mind-boggling. But if you pause and you go through the steps of what that meant, which I won't do necessarily right now, but if we paused and went through that in a bit of detail and saw the price that not only what Jesus paid to be crucified, you know, to be ripped apart, it says that his bodily form was unrecognizable as a human being. You would have looked at him and you didn't know whether it was Bob, Fred, or whoever. You couldn't recognize him as a person. He was so mutilated. Now, you think about this aspect. His father sent him to do that. His father. Now, I'm a father, I've only recently, in the last few years, since Zac learnt and started to understand what it is to be a father. And what I mean by that is to understand God as a father, and then know, what did he feel like when he sent his son? What did he do when he sent his son? What was it like for him? That is a really big deal. So for me, I just think when we look at God's love, it's not this pleasurable love, even though that's part of our life. It's a one where we're willing to pay a high price for something that's eternal.
Mm.
And so in this movie, you'll find part of the message, unapologetic, is this. We've got situations happening here in our own lives, in our community, in our nation, across the world right now, where people, just there's war and people are dying, these sorts of things. And you sit there and go, how are we spending our life? Are we investing our life in things that are only going to live in this time? Like we build a house, that's real important. And I've got a house, I think it's important. Only if it serves a purpose for eternal things.
Mm.
Otherwise, we're in time and things that will pass away and there'll be no benefit from. So what is eternal is a question for everybody. And I think the most important thing Zac talked about was he was willing to live and he was willing to die to reach people. He was willing even to give up the right to have a beautiful thing called a marriage and a wife. He was willing to do that. I think he did that. People might say it differently, but that's what I think he did. He paid that price. And eventually that day, even though I don't think he knew what was coming his way, a lot of people wrestle with that because, is that God's will for him to die in a shark attack? That question comes up. I don't know how to fully answer that, although I do have an answer, maybe not one short enough to give today. But I do know this, that one thing that comforted me and maybe will comfort people who are going through traumatic events, and that is, out of all the people I've interviewed around shark attacks, 95% of them, when they say they were bitten, they say this to me because I asked them permission if I can ask this pointed question. Can I ask you what you felt when you're bitten? And 95% of them said, Kev, I felt no pain.
Mm.
Now, if you're, and I visit shark attack parents of past people and that sort of thing, and at times God's done some incredible things in that space. But that's comforting for people. It's just a thing that had benefit to me to think about Zac in that space. But anyway, moving on. That's part of the story.
So it's a privilege to hear that story and to hear the mission that Zac sensed on his life. And, as you said, for you to be a part of it, for me to now be a part of it, and for everyone listening to now be a part of that, I can sense the love growing, and there is an event coming up which we want to promote. So the 24th of November, you mentioned something happening in Port Macquarie. Can you tell us a little bit about what's happening in Port Macquarie?
Yeah, on the 24th at 5 p.m. till 8 p.m, we've got a stage with bands. We'll have a big 2-story red bus, gazebos, all at the amphitheatre, Town Beach, Port Macquarie, starting at 5 p.m, finishing at 8 p.m. There'll also be a registration table there where you can register for the paddle out, which is the next day on the Saturday. On the Saturday, it starts at 7 a.m. and finishes at 8 p.m. But the paddle out will take registrations from 7 o'clock till 9 o'clock. We actually paddle out just before 9 o'clock. And we're having an attempt at the Guinness Book of Records, largest paddle out in the world.
My kids are really excited about this.
They should be, because of a few reasons. It's you wouldn't know this right now. There's a few. You've got some, what do you call it? Breaking news.
Yeah.
That's what they call it. And that is, there's a couple of exciting things happening. And that is, you can register online now. If you go to Love and Life Media Group, you'll find a link there, and you can go down the screen. You can see highlights and video clips and you'll see a registration part at the bottom of that screen to register for the event, so that you can save time on the Saturday morning at the paddle out. But even though you register, you do have to come to the registration table. We'll have one that'll be quicker than people who have to do it for the first time. Of course, you'll receive a wristband, and we've just got safety protocols in place. So we've got marine rescue, a couple of jet skis, a boat, and a new specialised boat with even a drawbridge at the front. It's a brand new thing, state of the art. And if anyone got in trouble in the water, this thing has ropes on the side of it, and you can hold about 20 people on the side of the boat. And also the drawbridge goes down, and if someone for any reason needed any help, we can just slide them into the boat really easy. Wow. So we've got all the safety things, Life Saving Australia there. We got a first aid tent, and all of those safety protocols have been done, but we're giving everybody a wristband. Now, we'll have advanced, intermediate and beginners in the water, and we just want to identify who they are. So it'll be 3 different colours, and we'll start heading towards the water at 9:15, which is the best time in the ocean from a tide perspective. So when we do that, we paddle out and eventually form a big circle. When we do, we'll have a drone over us that has got a voice activation, and it will say, we have to hold hands now. Everybody holds hands. He'll photograph every person in the water on a video, and we have to hold hands for 60 seconds. So I think we'll do it for 2 minutes, just make sure we get everybody, and we have to prove that on video. So everybody has to hold hands for 60 seconds, and if we can prove that on a video, then we send that off to the Guinness Book of Records. And if we've got 512 or more, then we take out the current record.
Wow.
Now, we're actually going for, we'd like to see 700 or 800. We want to blast it out of the water. So that's what we're doing. But a really big thing is this. Anyone who comes on that day, our documentary film crew will be there on the day filming all this. So anyone who comes to the paddle out will actually be in the documentary, Zac Young's documentary, that we're actually producing.
So this is like a chapter in the story, isn't it?
Yeah, that's part of the story. And also with your wristband, after we come out of the water, we've got a stage and we've got prizes coming up. We'll be actually picking numbers out of our little bowl or something, which will be the number of your wristband. And there'll be opportunity to win gifts and prizes that have been donated from our community, like possibly some of the, well, we'll just leave it. We're waiting now because a lot of these things are in process. We're hoping to see some great prizes and things that people are going to be stoked out. And I'd be waiting there, let alone them. I want to get a number. It could be a surfboard, I don't know, or other stuff like that. So we're waiting to see. We're doing all that at the moment. And one breaking news is this. I had a phone call from a lovely lady named Susan who works with ARD Television Germany. And apparently they've got a film crew in Singapore at the moment. And they want to do a documentary around, they saw Zac's story, which is part of this group that I'm on the committee of, which is called the Bite Club, B-I-T-E. Everybody says, what motorbike club is that? It's not a motorbike club. It's a shark attack group. Yeah. So it's a shark attack support group. And there'll be a guest on our paddle out that I'll leave the person's name off right now, but I guarantee you that if you're not down at the paddle out, when you find out who's coming to this, I'm leaving the name off the screen at the moment, you'll regret it for all of your life.
Oh, wow.
This is going to be the most spectacular thing that you've ever heard of, ever seen. I'm not talking about just in Port Macquarie or just in Australia. German television have heard about what's going on, and they want to take a documentary of our documentary. So they've asked permission to bring a film crew from Singapore over to document this on the shark attack group called the Bite Club on Zac's story. And a really important major thing that's happened, that's never happened, as far as I'm aware, what's going to happen on the paddle out has never happened on the planet before. This will not be a first attempt only for the Guinness Book of Records, but there'll be a highlight of something going on that I'm leaving as a surprise. You want to be down there at 6 o'clock to get a parking spot. You're going to have to park half a mile away at least. a mile away to even get down there.
Yeah.
Allow plenty of time, I'm telling you, and help me if you can by not parking down the front. Park a long way back in the streets above to give opportunity for other people to get down there.
Mm.
So that's going to be an amazing thing to have another documentary being done. We've got live music, giveaways, auctions,
Wow.
storytelling.
That's so good,
And
Kevin.
musically, I'm not sure if you've ever heard a really hot didgeridoo player, but we got, I think, cello, didgeridoo, some incredible instruments coming as part of the band. And it's going to be it's going to be a live, up-tempo thing. And so I think people are really going to have a ball.
Oh, that sounds so good, Kevin. Everyone listening, you've got to get down there. I'm going to put a link where you can go and register because, like Kevin said, it'll make it a lot easier if you register before the day. Register to be a part of this world record-breaking attempt. And as Kevin said, there's all sorts of other prizes and exciting things happening. But I guess most important of all, being a part of the love that is Zac and Kevin's story. So, Kevin, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It's so exciting to hear what's happening, and I can't wait to see you on the 24th and the 25th when this is all coming to fruition.
Okay, don't forget, wear bright summer clothes, put your boardies on. It doesn't matter whether there's a bodyboard, surfboard. You can hang 3 people off the same board. We'll have plenty of room for people who don't bring something down. Bring your esky if you have to turn it upside down. If it floats, you can be in the deal.
And there you have it. Kevin Young from Love and Life Media Group. He's pumped. He's excited. You know, there's grief mingled in there as well, understandably, of course. But he's filled with joy, filled with hope as he celebrates the 10-year anniversary of his son's passing. And with that passing of time, there's some clarity that's come on the mission that he's been called to, which is to share the love of God in every major city of the world. And this paddle out, this world record-breaking attempt is going to be a part of that story, and you can be a part of that story as well. So if you are excited as I am about leaving a legacy, about having eternal impact, then you can be a part of it. You just need to go to Love and Life Media Group. You can donate to the production of the film. You can register for the paddle out. You can learn more there. They've got all sorts of videos and resources there. I'm super pumped. I can't wait. Click the link below, just wherever you're listening to this podcast. Go and check out their site, and let's be a part of that story. All right, that's all from us for this week. I can't wait to catch you again on the next episode of Gifts from the Edge. That's all from me. Bye for now.